Hello there. It's me, Scara, Damsel of the Doomed. Welcome to another episode of Scara's Screamcast. Do you think I should change it to Scara's Spellcast? I like that. My buddy's been saying that to me, but for the purpose of branding's sake, I'm going to keep it as it is. Because, I have Scara's Scream Theater, which is my monthly horror movie night out at Doc's Drive-In Theater, where I show horror movies that I get to choose, I get to select, and then my dogs are fighting, if you can hear that. I get to select the horror movie, and then I get to tell you all about it. I tend to tell you how I like to research how the horror movie was made and then do a deep dive about it and then relate that to the audience. If you ever have a chance to come out to see me, it's the first Sunday of the month at Doc's Drive-In Theater. And in fact, we just recently had a Scream Theater this past Sunday that I'm going to tell you about. Oh, my Lord. I knew I shouldn't have eaten those dang pecan nut thins right before this. Got a little pecan nut thin on my esophagus, on my vocal folds. Just laying there, I could visualize it. Anyways, I'm going to tell you about that in a little bit. And also at the end of this episode, at the very end, I'm going to answer a few questions that I got from the old Facebook. And then, yeah, and I'm going to tell you about a few things first. And don't forget, hold on. Last week, I accidentally gave out the wrong phone number for my phone line. And that number, I'm going to give you the correct number now. For Scara's Scary Hotline, you can call 512-710-8766. Call me day or night. Call me and leave me a message. Ask me a question. Give me a comment. Whatever it is you want. Whatever it is you feel like saying. I'll play it on the Screamcast, okay? 512-710-8766. That's Scara's Scary Hotline. Call me unless you're afraid. Anyway, last time I gave out the complete wrong number. How embarrassing. Good Lord. But look, I've been busy. I've been real busy, boys. This past weekend, I got to work at the Horror for the Holidays event put on by Blood Over Texas. Blood Over Texas is a fantastic organization here in Austin, Texas. They've been around for a very long time, over a decade, and they put on all sorts of horror events, and not just horror for the holidays. They put on a lot of different. Oh no! Oh, that knocked out the camera. I'm going to go to this cam. Gomez just knocked over a light and knocked out a camera. I think maybe he unplugged it. So I'm glad we have two cameras. That would have been the end of that. This is me being like, no, I don't want to put my dogs away during my podcast, because if something happens live, I want it to be authentic. Like, this is what goes on in my life. Little did I know Gomez was going to knock over a dang Sony camera. You know what I mean? I hope it's workable. We're testing it now. Let me see. Hey, it's on. Okay, good. Now we just got to get the light on. Good golly, Miss Molly Gomez. I was right in the middle of giving praise to Blood Over Texas for doing amazing horror events. And we have light. Let's open that barn door. Thank you. Goodness gracious. See, they get rambunctious at night, those dogs. The dachshunds of the doomed can't be stopped. Goodness. Okay. Where was I? Blood Over Texas. They put on lots of horror events. One of them is Horror for the Holidays. It's been going on for over 10 years. I want to say it's been 12 years now. And I have been attending Horror for the Holidays since 2019 with Bat City Scaregrounds or Horror Web. And I have been working for the organization officially for a couple of years. This year was the first year that we had panels with celebrities that I got to interview. And it was also the first year there was a little film festival, which was awesome. So the very first celebrity guest that was interviewed at Horror for the Holidays, as far as I know, I could be wrong, maybe somebody else was interviewed, was Ken Foray. You know Ken Foray, he was the main protagonist in Dawn of the Dead. He's like 5'5". He's in his 70s now, and he is full of stories. And Ken warned me. I went by his table to introduce myself before the interview, and he warned me. He said, listen, you're going to ask me something, and I'm going to go on, and I'm going to tell a story as my answer. And I was like, Ken, everybody want to hear you talk more than they want to hear me talk. So please, I'll give you the lead and you run off with it. You know what I mean? And sure as shit, that's what happened. I researched Mr. Foray and I asked him certain questions. Some of them I knew he already had stories for. And he answered in long form. But it was great because he's an orator. You know what I mean? He's a speaker. And Ken let us know that he has written a comic book that is soon to be available. And hopefully we'll be able to get our hands on that and take a look. But it's a zombie comic book, of course. That's Ken. And then the next day, so I was out there on Saturday and Sunday. So on Sunday, or let me go back. On Saturday, I interviewed Ken, and then I led the elf races. Okay. Then Sunday, I was able to. Oh, look at this. Oh, I see. There's people in the chat. Hello, everyone. Okay. Then Sunday, I was able to interview Dee Wallace and Henry Thomas from frickin' E.T. What? What? Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something right now. Let me go to this camera. I saw E.T. as a child. One of the first movies I've ever seen in the movie theater. Maybe the first, I can't remember. And it was, and still is, like magic. I don't know how or why Stephen King is so amazing. Steven Spielberg and King. But we're talking about E.T. Steven Spielberg was so amazing. That movie is 100% of its time, meaning the 1980s. It's very 80s. When you watch it today, it's very, very 1980s. The colors, the lingo, the technology, it's all very 80s, right? The decor of the houses, everything. So it's very of its time. And at the same time, it's very timeless. I believe anybody could watch that movie of any age and enjoy it. I believe if you put that movie on for today's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds on up to 80-year-olds, whatever, they would still enjoy that movie. It's so well done and it's so heartfelt. And I think the children bring a lot to that role. I think Dee Wallace as the mother, Mary, I think was the character's name, is very nurturing and loving, and she just gets it very right. And I think Henry Thomas as Elliot was one of the best performances by a child I've ever seen. He is, and Drew Barrymore too. I mean, all the kids in that movie were spot on. And that tells me a couple of things. One, the kids are super talented. Amazing casting on that movie, right? But two, Stephen King, I keep saying King. Did you know? I love Stephen King. Steven Spielberg must have been an amazing director with children, which I've read over and over again that he's very good at working with children. Children, I think, are used to doing pretend play. That's part of development. It's part of child development is learning how to pretend play. With each other, with their toys, you know, let's pretend we're astronauts. Let's pretend we are cops and robbers or whatever, you know. This is something that is a normal childhood development tool. And I think when they're so close to being able to doing pretend play to hopping into acting, it is almost seamless for a lot of them. And they have no fear of judgment because they're so used to doing pretend play. Now, don't get me started on my fears of us losing pretend play to the digital stuff going on. The iPad kids, for example. The iPad kids get the iPad shoved in front of their face at a very young age. I'm talking toddlers. These kids often don't know how to turn the page of a book. I just dropped a pin. But they do know how to scroll at 2 years old. That's crazy. I worry about those kids not developing pretend play, which really lends itself to developing social skills. Hold on. Being able to relate to people in public. It's a whole rabbit hole I could go down. Maybe I will one day, but I guess my advice is if you have children, be careful. Make sure they're in the real world as much as possible. Give them a little screen time, whatever you got to do, but real world stuff, real world interactions. Okay. Anyhow, Steven Spielberg, that actually connects to the movie I'm going to tell you about. So I was able to interview Dee Wallace and Henry Thomas of E.T. and many other movies. They've been in lots and lots of movies. And that was that was Sunday. And then I had to leave from downtown Austin to go to far South Austin, Buda, and do Scary Scream Theater. But I guess my takeaway from interviewing those actors, I've been interviewing actors, directors, etc., for quite some time now, since 2018 or 19. And my takeaway, regardless of the celebrity of the person I'm interviewing, you know, how big they are, if they're still acting, if they haven't had a job in a while, almost all of them relate that acting is like a job to job career. You might become an actor and do really well for a few years, and then you have nothing for several in a row. What a scary profession. If you ask me, what a scary and risky profession it is to be an actor. And most of them aren't, you know, living in these mansions that you think they are, right? The movie stars are, you know, your Brad Pitts. I can't think of your Angelina Jolie. Of course they are. But these actors that have been in a lot of movies, not all, you know, there's gaps. There's just gaps between what they were doing. So I don't know, man. Acting seems like a really tough thing. But I always try to thank them for doing what they did because it provides us with so much entertainment. Let's see. Someone says that was like a special treat movie they put on for us. I've seen it 8,000 times. It's still good. Yeah, E.T. was a special treat movie, wasn't it? Let me see if I could put this over here. I'm still working with this interface. Is it showing? Well, no. I'll have to practice my interface on this later. I don't really want to do all that right now. But yeah, E.T., everybody loves that movie. Okay, so Sunday, I drive to the next gig, right? And I am tired, but I love Scary Scream Theater. So I go and I stop over at Bat City Scaregrounds first. Hang out for 30 minutes or so. And I hit the road and I go to Scary Scream Theater. And the reason why, I'll tell you why Steven Spielberg relates. It's because he was the producer on this movie that I'm about to tell you about, The Gremlins from 1984. Let's see. Oh, first of all, you know, to advertise the movies, they're always secret until you get there, but I like to do videos and poster work that really reveal what it is without saying it. You know what I mean? And I went in search for a certain item that I wanted to use in the poster, and I ended up having to go to Facebook Marketplace for it. And I bought it on Facebook Marketplace. I had to meet a lady in a Kohl's parking lot. Kohl's parking lot in Cedar Park, Texas, to get this little doodad. But look, he even sings. Hold on. Oh my gosh. Hello, that's cute, isn't it? And now I just have a dang old gizmo. But the lady was trying to sell it to me in a bundle deal with a gremlin with a what do you call those fucking the new Beanie Babies? What are they called? Not a Furby, Labubu. She was trying to bundle deal this with a Labubu, and I said, I don't want the Labubu. Will you knock $10 off? Just sell me the gizmo. And she was like, yeah. I don't like Labubus. Okay. I don't understand them. Is it just one of those things where everybody wants to buy the same thing so they feel like they're part of the same club? If that's it, I get it. I get it. You want to signal that you belong, right? When you see each other in the real world, you want to signal you belong to each other's group. That's what we do with all sorts of things. We do that with how we dress and how we do our makeup and what music we're listening to. So I get it. I just don't want to signal anything with a Labubu. I don't like them. As I hold this fucking, I would have, and I don't, look. Now I have this. It's cute though, but I don't, it's, whatever. Okay. So the way I start out Scream Theaters, first of all, I write all of my research in my book, and I call it a sermon. My dad was a deacon in a Catholic church, and growing up, I would attend the Mass, and I would watch him often deliver a sermon. He was very good at it. He was a good speaker. He taught me how to be a speaker in some ways, and he delivered his sermon, and he would write it out the night before, sometimes the morning of Mass, and now look at me, Daddy. Look at me now. I bet he's proud. Anyway, so I write out I do my research, I write out my sermon, I climb up on the giant zombie head the day of the event. Everybody's there. The cars are in the parking lot. The lights are on. I can't see anything. And I start off by reading usually, not the synopsis, but like the tagline, the movie tagline that you can find on IMDb or whatever. And this is how I started it. On the 7th of December, 2025. After receiving an exotic small animal as a Christmas gift, a young man inadvertently breaks 3 important rules concerning his new pet, which unleashes a horde of malevolent, mischievous creatures on a small town. And then I go like this. I introduce myself. I say, hello, my name is Scara, Damsel of the Doomed. Welcome to Horror Web Presents Scara's Scream Theater. Tonight, we are screaming Gremlins. Did I say screaming? Tonight, we are screening Gremlins. And usually at that point, people are like, yeah. People are honking their horns. Beep, 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 beep. It's super cute. I love an audience. I love my audience. I love hanging out with people out there. All right. Then I go into the research. And I think you're going to enjoy this research. But I give a few basic facts, and then it's research. So here we go. Gremlins is a 1984 American black horror comedy written by Chris Columbus, directed by Joe Dante, and produced by Steven Spielberg. It stars Zach Galligan, Phoebe Cates, Hoyt Axton, Polly Holliday, and Frances Lee McCain, with voice acting by Frank Welker and Howie Mandel. The notion of gremlins as a malevolent creature was first conceived in the 1920s when mechanical aircraft failures were blamed on small monsters that would get into the plane engines and mess things up. A Bugs Bunny cartoon in 1943 called Falling Hair shows Bugs battling a gremlin on an airplane. I think my dog's knocked something over. The team, I think they're gremlins. In fact, I call Herman often a goblin gremlin because he makes this sound like this. Arr, arr, arr. Anyways, Falling Hair shows Bugs battling a gremlin on an airplane. The team was somewhat forgotten, or the term was somewhat forgotten until writer Chris Columbus brought it back. Inspired by hearing skittering mice crawling in his loft apartment, he started imagining these creatures at night. And he was so inspired, he wrote immediately a spec script about it. Now, a spec script is what writers will write and send to various studios to show their writing ability. They haven't been hired to write these things. They just write one, send it off to all the different studios, as many as they can. And they hope that one of the studios will hire them to write whatever movie it is. Studios will option rights from novels, and then they'll hire screenwriters to write the screenplay. You know, this is how it goes. So Chris Columbus, he did this with his spec script for Gremlins. He wasn't thinking it was going to be a movie. But, well, before I go into that, he wanted a term for Gremlins. He had the word Gremlins, but he wanted a term for this little guy before they became the Gremlin, when they were just still, you know, the cute little fuzzy gizmo guy, right? And so he looked up the term Gremlin in a Chinese dictionary, and it wasn't in there, of course. And he looked up what the closest thing to it, which was devil. And the word devil in the Chinese dictionary, the closest thing to gremlin that he could find, is the word, you get the word magui, I think is how you say it, magui. Magui. And he pronounced it mogwai. So gizmo is a mogwai, right? Mogwai. Back then, oh, I already told you that part. Okay, so he sends his spec script all over the place, and one of the studios he sent it to is Amblin Production Company. Is that right? Amblin Entertainment. That's what it's called. Amblin Entertainment was Steven Spielberg's newly formed production company. Spielberg saw the script and it stuck out to him because he thought, oh, that's an interesting name, Chris Columbus, you know? How many writers do you know named Chris Columbus? Funny name. So he read it and loved it immediately. And in fact, he said it was one of the most original things I've come across in many years, which is why I bought it. He called Chris Columbus, let him know he wanted to buy it. Chris Columbus at first thought he was being, you know, his leg was being pulled and that it wasn't Steven Spielberg and somebody was joking with him. But with a little convincing, he realized he was really talking to Steven Spielberg. And it's like, of course you could buy this dang script. Let's make this movie. So Spielberg initially wanted Tim Burton to direct Gremlins, which I think would have been so cool. Oh my God. I can almost see in my head, because Gremlins is, I'm going to go in this later, but it's such a stylized movie. And Tim Burton stuff is so stylized. It would have been over the top, even more stylized, I think, if Tim Burton did it. But I'm not mad at who did do it. Joe Dante ended up directing it. Now, the reason why he wanted Tim Burton was he saw Tim Burton's short, Frankenweenie. Back then it was just a short. And he knew his style would have matched this movie. But unfortunately, Tim Burton hadn't directed a feature length yet. So, you know, Pee-wee's Big Adventure was not, he hadn't got that job yet. So he was still, you know, a very baby, wet behind the ears director, and he didn't want to go with him for that reason. So he decided to go with Joe Dante based on two movies that Joe Dante had done. Joe Dante directed Piranha and The Howling, which kind of winked at the contemporary culture of the time and especially the culture of movies. All right, back to the script real quick. Gremlins was originally written to be a very dark horror movie, a very R-rated horror movie. A horror movie in the traditional sense of horror movies. There were scenes in which the lead character, one of the lead characters, the mother, was decapitated during her struggle with the gremlins, and her decapitated head gets thrown down the stairs as her husband or her child arrives. Just, you know, hitting each step on the way down, ta-tunk, 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 falling at the feet of young Billy, which I kind of want to see. I wish they would have filmed these scenes and we could see them later, but I understand. There was also a scene where the gremlins eat Billy's dog. That dog was so cute in that movie. It would have that would have been the death of that franchise if you would have killed that dog. The only movie that I don't get super mad at that a dog gets killed in it is are the ones with Keanu Reeves. The names escape me. You know what I'm talking about. They kill his dog like immediately, but then he kills everybody. What's the name of that movie? Boy, that's the only one that is semi-acceptable. Because if you kill a dog in a movie and it doesn't kick off a freaking murder spree of hundreds of bodies, I'm not watching anything you do ever again. There's also a scene where the gremlins attack a McDonald's, and instead of eating the food that goes left untouched on the tables, they eat all the patrons. You see how it's weird? What a double standard that I'm totally cool with the patrons of a McDonald's being eaten alive. But don't mess with no dogs. I don't know why that is. I do know, because dogs rule and humans drool. That's why. Not all humans, but almost all dogs are great. All dogs go to heaven, baby. All dogs go to heaven, baby. Okay, it was Spielberg's goal to make the movie more audience-friendly while maintaining a satirical edge. He taught Chris Columbus how to understand the needs of an audience, what the audience needs. The audience does not need to see a dog getting murdered by the Gremlins, okay? The audience needs someone to root for, aka Gizmo. See, it was Spielberg's idea to keep one gremlin a mogwai. He wanted one gremlin to remain pure, to become a second protagonist, to become the companion of Billy, the main protagonist. And he was right. I mean, the movie's called Gremlins, but if you don't have this little cute little mogwai to root for, it's just chaos, okay? So it made the move, because of Gizmo, the movie was more accessible to more of a broad audience, and it was more emotional. You had this little guy singing his, look. How cute is that, right? More emotional, okay? So Chris Columbus says he wrote anywhere between 7 to 10 drafts of the Gremlins. And he said the key to good writing is rewriting. And he finally settled on the final script, ready to go. The film was shot for 3 months with the actors and the Gremlin puppets and all of their scenes that they were together, and then the scenes of just the actors alone. And then it was another 2.5 months of mostly scenes with just the Gremlins, you know, all, like the scenes, all of the bar scenes, the fabulous. Oh, I love that scene in the bar with the Gremlins. They're all just wreaking havoc and playing poker and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so it was a very long shoot. One of the reasons was because this was before CGI, and all of the Gremlins were puppets. They were animatronic and puppeted, you know. And for each Gremlin, there were several people operating different things on the Gremlins. Good old Gizmo, he himself had like 3 different peel-off faces that they would have to peel off, put back on, peel off, put back on to show different emotions. The Gremlins, like, you can kind of tell also how he was feeling based on how his ears were moving. They didn't, you never see old Gizmo walking because his legs would have had to been really, really long, and it would have been an even more difficult process. In fact, most puppets you see are shot from the waist up because legs are a whole thing, apparently. But his arms, you know, were operated with rods and pulleys and cables and all this stuff. And he was usually carried around by the actor who played Billy. And Billy had all of these, or Gizmo had all of these cables and cords like coming out of him, right? That were hidden. And they would go to the actor who played Billy, and they were taped down his body and would come out like his pant leg. And that's how they were able to operate Gizmo. Billy would walk around with him. The puppeteers and, you know, special effects crew were behind, pushing their different levers and squeezing different buttons and pulleys and whatever. And Gizmo was moving around. But they would, because there was so much equipment, Gizmo in particular would break down all the time. And in fact, the crew would get so irritated, they started a list called Terrible Things to Do to Gizmo. And one of those things was stick him on the wall and throw darts at him. And in fact, they did that in the movie. They decided to put that in the movie. Gizmo's like spinning around and the other gremlins are throwing darts at him. That was what the crew wanted to do. Excuse me. Okay, let's say I got off track here a little bit, but so there's a lot of delays. Gizmo was hard, but they did it. And the movie is a satire, right? It's a bit of a riff of It's a Wonderful Life. It's a bit of that, right? But it's got a storybook element, but it's got an edge, a little bit of a darkness, and because of the storybook element, and because you had these gremlins and Gizmo, they wanted the set to be super stylized. One of the reasons was if you shoot on a very stylized set, then the audience is able to buy in quicker that these are real creatures, that the gremlins are real. But if you're to take Gizmo out to just the regular street, you're shooting on location somewhere, it's a real place, and he's out there with just real life, he's going to look very fake, and it's going to be harder for the audience to just kind of let go and buy into the fantasy. You know what I mean? It's also why they used a lot of unknown actors. A lot of the times, this is a trick. A lot of the times in films that involve creatures and fantasy, they tend to use unknown actors instead of movie stars, so that you're not sitting there thinking, oh, who did I see this one in? Who did I see that one in? What, blah, blah, blah. That holds true for everyone except for Phoebe Cates, because we all know Phoebe Cates was in Fast Times at Ridgemont High with that famous scene coming out of the pool. So that was hard to forget, and still is. Thank you, Miss Phoebe Cates. Okay. So that's why they decided to shoot it on the back lot of whatever studio, and they built a whole bunch of different sets for it, and it's just super stylized and very fantastical. I almost said fanatical. Fantastic. Joe Dante really knows movies, and he was able to capture the Norman Rockwell spirit while turning it on its head at the same time. Every frame is packed with visual information. There are certain scenes that there are things going on in the background that I didn't realize until I had watched it 2 or 3 times. If you watch this, if you finish listening to this or watching me on YouTube, go put on the Gremlins and just pay attention to what's going on in the background, especially when actor Hoyt Axon is at his invention convention, and he's on the phone in the payphone, and he's talking to his family or whatever. Oh my gosh. There's all sorts of stuff going on in the background of that scene. Hoyt Axon, by the way, wasn't an actor. He was a folk musician. Joe Dante was a fan. They cast him. He's so natural in this movie. He was told basically to read the lines, but say them how he would say them, not to really memorize the dialogue verbatim as written, but to say it how he was saying it. Some directors and writers, filmmakers, they're very specific about the script, and some aren't. Joe Dante was not. He wanted Hoyt Axon, for example, to give the 3 rules of the Mogwai in a way he would say it. So if anything, Google the 3 rules of the Gremlins and see Hoyt Axon delivering that. And it's you feel like you're watching your dad telling you how to take care of a dog. You know what I mean? Oh, and here's a tidbit. Hoyt Axon's mom wrote Heartbreak Hotel for Elvis Presley. Pretty cool. Okay. So let's see. Then there was the monologue. Phoebe Cates delivers this very dark monologue about her dad and Christmas night, and why she has this issue with Christmas or whatever. And it's very dark, especially for its time, but it's also very ridiculous. So the audience didn't know how to take it. Do we laugh? It makes them uncomfortable, which oh man, it's one of my favorite feelings is sensing other people's discomfort. But We won't go into that. But Phoebe's monologue, um, the execs, all the studio execs were freaked out about it and they wanted it cut because they thought, oh, it's going to be too confusing. The audience won't know how to handle it. We can't leave it in. We can't leave it in. But Joe Dante, it was one of his favorite parts of the movie. He knew that the audience didn't know whether to laugh or cry about it, whether to laugh at the ridiculousness or cry about how sad the story was. And he said it lends to what makes the movie so uniquely twisted. And I believe he was right. It is. I remember that scene from when I was a kid, and it was so strange. It was just almost feels like it sticks out a little bit, but in a good way. Now, the musical score was composed by Jerry Goldsmith. The main score was composed to convey the mischievous humor and mounting suspense of the Gremlins. It elevates the film as most scores do, but this you remember dun 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 dun. Very good, right? Gizmo's song that I've played for you 17 times was hummed by a little girl soprano from the choir at Goldsmith's Temple. But all of the Gremlin voices were done by a few other dudes I'm going to tell you about. Did I already tell you about them? No. Well, Howie Mandel did Gizmo's voice, and then there was another fella who was at the time voiced just about everything out there that could be voiced was done by this guy. And he was the one who actually wanted to bring Howie Mandel in. And there were some other guys that lended their voices too. So the movie gets filmed and then they play the footage for the people that are going to voice, Frank Welker. And they play it for him, and then they, the voice actors get to have fun after the movie's been filmed. Okay. So the movie wraps, the voice actors do their thing, everything's good. Gremlins was released on June 8th, 1984, the same day as Ghostbusters. Interestingly enough, Ghostbusters and Gremlins both kind of ushered in a new era of horror comedy. Before that, horror comedy was like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, 1948, which is a movie that I saw as a very, very young kid and I enjoyed. I still like that movie. Maybe I'll watch that tonight. But it was, that movie was very, very comedy with some horror elements, whereas Ghostbusters and Gremlins are a little heavier on the sci-fi horror stuff. You know what I mean? It's a different blend, I would say, of horror and comedy, and it ushered in all sorts of other horror comedies after that. The movie was a financial success, doing great its first week at the box office and doing even better its second week, which is very hard to do. And it received good and bad reviews, of course. I always like to read the bad reviews, especially of these movies that are staples in the culture that have lasted for decades. I like to go back and read what reviewers said that didn't like it. And John Nubbin reviewed Gremlins for Different Worlds magazine, and he said, all in all, it's just another summer film, which in the end has nothing to keep our memories past Thanksgiving. Bitch, what? Bitch, what? It is December 10th, 2026 right now. I think it's the 10th. And I'm talking about Gremlins right now, John Nubbin. What are you doing? John Nubbin? Probably nothing. John Nubbin. First, I don't even get movie critics. I'm going to do a whole episode on Facebook movie critics leaving, I don't know why everybody likes X, Y, or Z movie, and then just shits all over it. I don't care what you like, Bob. You didn't like Frankenstein? You didn't like Nosferatu? The new ones I'm talking about? I don't care. And nobody does. God, negative. Anyways, back to Gremlins. The movie was criticized for some of its more violent sequences, because you got to remember, this movie was rated G. It was definitely not an R movie. And at the time, there was not a PG-13. It was G, it was R, it was X, whatever. And, but it was, when you look at that movie, it really is, especially at the time, too violent for children. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, released the same year, was also criticized for the same thing. So Steven Spielberg suggested that the Motion Picture Association of America alter its rating system, which it did 2 weeks after the film's release, creating the PG-13 rating. That's what happened. That's why we have it. So that's pretty much it for the Gremlins. I again will say filmmaking is collaborative. You've got somebody who writes the story. You got a producer who comes on who helps to shape the story to make it better, more palatable, to get things going and get things rolling and get this and that. You've got executive producers and all of that, the money men and the studios and all that behind it. Then you get a director come in and he has a clear vision, and he has the actors who he tells the vision, directs them in achieving this vision, right? You have the set designers and the composers and the voice actors and everybody. Filmmaking is never just one person. It's never just one. Sure, the director is in charge of the set, and you got to have one person it comes down to with, making the decisions. But all of this stuff that comes together to make the art of filmmaking is so many people. And there should be a collaboration. In fact, going back to old Ken, talking about Ken Foray from Dawn of the Dead, he said that ego often gets in the way of good collaboration on movie sets. Ego will tell filmmakers to not listen to anybody. And it's a trap. You really have to listen to the people you're working with. You don't have to do what they're saying. You don't have to take their suggestion, but you should listen. Because if Chris Columbus didn't listen to Steven Spielberg about keeping one Mogwai pure, we would not have Gizmo, and Gremlins would not be as good as it is to this day. And in fact, Gremlins 3 is set to be filmed, I think, in 2027. Check the IMDb page. It was already announced. I keep looking to see when production's going to start, and I think the last time I saw it said 2027. So they're probably getting pre-production and all that going on now, which is exciting. And Chris Columbus is he's signed on as director. So the writer of the very first Gremlins is coming back, but he's going to help write it and direct it because he's done a lot of movies as a director now. So that's cool. Okay. Where are we at on time? Okay. Let me answer a few questions from Facebook real quick. Do I have my phone with me? Let me look. I hope you enjoyed that. So that's what I do at Scary Scream Theater is I get on and I often tell about how the movie was made, and then I give some of my opinions as well. As a horror movie fan and a horror host, that's what I do. I'm pulling up my Facebook real fast. I put this on Instagram and Facebook, a little thing saying, "Hey, if you got a question, you can ask me." Here it is. Okay. Let's see. All comment. All right. Just have a few questions. So I'll start with this one. This one's fun. Amy Marie says, how does Scara like her hot dog dress? Not hot dog dress, hot dog dressed. Although I would like a hot dog dress maybe. But sometimes I feel like I'm dressed like a hot dog. My dresses are so tight, I feel like a sausage sometimes, just encased. But she didn't ask that. She asked, how does Scara like her hot dog dressed? What do you like to put on it? I'm going to tell you exactly how I like my hot dogs because I usually eat a hot dog at Scary Scream Theater from the snack bar at Doc's Drive-In Theater. They have a great snack bar. And this is what I do. They get me a hot dog weenie. They cut it down the middle. Okay? They take the side, they take it and put it flat side on the grill. Both sides, both halves, flat side on the grill. And they get that bitch hot and crispy. I like a crispy edge all around, okay? Don't even give me a bun. I don't want a bun, especially buns these days. I don't want any shelf stable bullshit bun messing with my gut biome. I don't want it. Don't even put the bun close to not in the vicinity of my hot dog. Take that hot dog off the grill when it's good and crispy and warm. Put it now flat side up in a little hot dog tray. Put on that bitch some relish. I don't want no sweet relish. God forbid you give me any sweet relish. Sweet relish shouldn't be a thing if you ask me. I want dill pickle relish. And I want mustard. 1 squirt. Like that. Give me a fork and a knife and I'll eat it. Fun fact, I usually use chopsticks when I eat. Heck, my fingernails can act like chopsticks. But at dogs, I usually, I'll cut it in little bites and I eat it like that with my fingers. That's how I like my hot dog. Amy, thank you for asking. Ricky Miller says, when is Damsel of the Doomed going to be available? He's been waiting on his email when he signed up at Houston Horror Film Fest. We had an email listing so that we can let people know when they can stream Damsel of the Doomed. Damsel of the Doomed is a movie that I wrote and I star in. It's about me, obviously. Directed by Corey Trahan, Kayla Stojek, and Jamie Jones on as ADs and other roles. Zach Stojek, Donnie Kavanaugh, John Bach, all sorts of people jumped in to help with that. We had a beautiful, wonderful crew. Too many to name. I will. Eventually, I'm going to do a whole episode on it where I talk about everybody involved and give my proper thanks to everyone. Again, I can never thank people enough for jumping in on that movie. I can never thank people enough, everybody that worked on that movie. There will never be a day where I think, that's good. I don't have to say thank you. No, there will never be a day. But to answer the question, I think it will be released in 2026, in a few months, maybe. I don't know. The last I talked to the director / executive producer, he was getting the deliverables ready, which means every streaming site needs their own thumbnail and their own banner formats, and they all need several different images and all these different things that you have to do if you're streaming a movie. But I think because he's getting that ready, it's going to be pretty soon. Then everybody could see me doing movie stuff. That's crazy. That's going to be crazy. I can't even believe. What did I do? I was in a movie. I wrote a movie. That's so weird. But I did. It's called Damsel of the Doomed. And you'll be able to see it soon, Ricky Miller. Thank you for asking. Once again, if you want to ask me a question or if you have a comment, if you want to ask me a question or if you have a comment, you can call me 512-710-8766. 512-710-8766. And then I'll talk to you about it, okay? Give me a call. So we're about ready to wrap it up. What do I got going on? This week, nothing, and I'm so freaking happy. I was so drained. What is today, Wednesday? Monday and Tuesday, I barely did anything. Oh my gosh. I'm getting my energy back now, so I'm feeling good. I need to pick what movie I'm going to do for the next Scream Theater. I like to plan it as far in advance as I can, and I want to go with something dark. I want to go with something dark and scary. I want to go with something that's going to be disturbing. That, if you accidentally see it while you're driving by docks, you're going to be like, what the fuck was that? That's what I want to show. So I got to pick one of those. But that's not until January. This weekend, I don't have any plans, and I am pumped. I can't tell, this doesn't happen often. I am pumped. So I'm going to, I'll be doing stuff. I can't ever not do stuff, but I don't have to be anywhere. I don't have to do my makeup if I don't want to. Okay? That's a good thing. So I will see you though on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday. I like to do these weekly. And I'll give you an update on the Dachshunds of the Doomed. Little Gomez is going in Friday to get another blood draw. And then I think he's going to have to get a liver biopsy. Ooh, I'll tell you about that later. Until then, we're going to wrap it up. My name is Scara, Damsel of the Doomed. This is Scary Screamcast. I'm going to say goodnight now, but I'll see you in your screams. Goodbye. Ooh.